So you've been training since a while, but off late, you've been doing everything right. Or maybe you're not even training since a while, you're someone who's decently new, but you got a decent amount of progress initially. And now you've just stalled in the sense, not just kind of results, but at the gym, it just doesn't feel like, you'll get that bang for buck, if you get what I mean. Internally, you visualize these things that, okay, I'm doing this exercise and this is how it will build my muscle and stuff like that. So that kind of chain of thought and, that feeling that, okay, I'm making some meaningful thing happen at the gym. We obviously do not know all the science that exists in this regard, but you visualize it in some way. So that's exactly what we're doing in this video. If there is this kind of disconnect that off late, it's just not clicking, something's just a bit off, maybe that's why my progress is slow and stuff, we'll try to boil it down to these two concepts that you can really easily visualize and then tell, okay, maybe it's one of these two things or maybe both of these two things that might benefit me. And these are fundamentals applicable to everything you do at the gym. So let's break it in. Okay, I'll give you a quick snippet. Both of these concepts that we'll get into would make you go, ooh, so this is what happens. It's definitely worth that much hype. Number one, while doing any exercise, hopefully we know that getting the full stretch or the full range of motion is where it is and it's very necessary. But that's just not as per feels ke full range kar liya. It is about knowing and using this concept or understanding ke how does a muscle actually fully stretch on both sides of where it is attached to the body itself. Which is like, for example, for the bicep, it is here and we are into it. Number two, just consciously making exercises super slow and light for the sake of control because someone said so, that slow is better, instead of actually actively resisting and then becoming slow organically while doing the exercise. That's where it is at. Once we clearly define or make it easy for ourselves to visualize these two concepts and then fix them, is going to be a 2x effect for sure. And pretty immediately your training efficiency and output will be kind of way faster and skyrocket. You will build muscle in less time and maybe spend less energy getting into the feels side of things. Let's get it. The concept number one, fully stretching a muscle from both ends, change the game. Most people think of a muscle like a single unit or a blob, one flexible blob that contracts and expands. It's good to look at it that way, but in reality, at a deeper level, it is made up of lakhs of muscle fiber. You might have heard of this as well. But just as an example, our biceps have 250 to 400k muscles. And overall, every muscle has two ends. One is fixed to some joint and the other one is as well, but it is kind of free moving. We'll take a few examples and you'll be able to see what I mean. But overall, it's definitely like an elastic band. You can see that. And just like an elastic band, if you don't stretch it from both ends, the force it creates is going to be less. And you won't be using the full potential of that elastic band to produce that amount of recoil and force, which is basically what you do in exercises with your muscles as well. Because if you do not stretch your muscle from both sides fully, you might not recruit as many muscle fibers at a deeper level. क्योंकि खींचा ही नहीं है properly, तो use ही क्यों होगा? It is need based for sure. Your body is adaptive that way. And less of that means definitely less bang for buck from that movement. You can do more. That's why I'd like to introduce this concept, which is the rubber band rule. Imagine a tight rubber band stretched between two fixed points. That's your muscle. When you pull and release the rubber band from between, it snaps back with full force if it's tightly attached to both ends. Now imagine that one end is loose or not so stretched and attached. When you stretch and still release it, there is a decent amount of tension, but the force is weak and inefficient. It's still there, okay? And you still feel the tension, as I said. That's exactly what happens when you don't fully stretch a muscle from both ends before contracting it or letting it recoil. Example one, to make it very easy, the most basic one, which is biceps. Biceps are attached in two places, which is one here near your elbow and your forearms and near your shoulders on the other side. Now imagine you're doing a regular dumbbell curl with like a dumbbell. You're doing a standing curl. The weight in your hand will pull and stretch the muscle from the elbow side of your muscle. The shoulder side of your muscle, it'll just be hanging because of the weight again. But the shoulder side or the upper end of the bicep, it won't be fully stretched in comparison to something like a behind the body cable curl, which is basically take your elbow further behind your back at the start and your bicep is stretched from both ends because this part stretches your shoulder end of the bicep and the cable will pull your other side of the bicep, which is on your elbow and forearms wala side. Now the result in this one, there's way more tension from both sides. Your bicep is fully stretched like a rubber band from both sides, and that means there'll be a stronger recoil or a stronger contraction involving much more muscle fibers. That's pretty much about it. Your biceps contract harder and they are stimulated to grow better. Now example 2, let's take a slightly more complicated one, which is your chest. It is attached near the sternum on one side, which is like here at the center. There's two chest muscles. It's attached here, one of them, and the other end is right here near your shoulders. Now ever noticed when like how some people feel their chest more when they do flies or cable flies than bench presses. That's because pressing mainly stretches the outer part of your chest, which is near your shoulders, a bit more and better, because the inner sides, it needs a deeper arch to fully stretch because it is attached here. But the bench behind you that you're sleeping on, it is kind of flat. So you to safely push a good amount of weight, you can't go for like a power lifter arch at all times and wreck your feels or the shoulders when if you do like a bench press for a lot of reps like this with like a deep ass stretch. So that's why flies, on the other hand, stretch the whole chest, especially the inner stuff as well, because you remove any slack as you pull the cables, arch up and step a few steps ahead. It's fully stretched and then you do the reps under a full deep stretch, creating maximum tension on the whole muscle and involving as many muscle fibers. And then comes in doing slow and stuff. But that's for the second part of our video. And this is why some people naturally in their bench, they do find their best angles and stuff that gives them good feels, but most do not. And they just miss out on muscle activation and they just feel it on their shoulders and stuff like that. So just experiment, because like a quick fix, experiment with different pressing angles until you feel the full stretch from both ends of your chest, the inner side and the outer one, and see if you can optimize that. Now let's go to the main bit, which is we spoke about like the few easily visualizable muscle groups. Let's see what we could do for the others. This principle of stretching it from both ends applies to all muscle groups, of course, but some would be harder to visualize, especially if you're new to gym stuff. So with glutes, for example, to get a full stretch, first think what are the two ends of your glutes attached. On the top, your bum is attached to your lower back and the back overall, and on the bottom it is attached to your hamstrings. Now how do you stretch something as complex as that? Your glutes are literally slingshots. I might have another video on like slingshots and hinge movements as well. But bending the low back stretches the glute slingshot from the upper side, like you might have felt when you do something like hyper extensions or GHR. If you don't know what that is, YouTube it for sure. And then when you stretch and engage the hamstrings on the lower side as well, while doing something like a Romanian deadlift or a deadlift, you've got way more power because your hip literally becomes a slingshot and your glutes can thrust with the full deep stretch. Which is why also you might relate to this, which is a hip thrust would be half-baked or not be as potent of a glute builder compared to a RDL. Even though there's the same slingshot type of feel, but hip thrust में RDL जितना hamstring वाला side of your glutes stretch नहीं हो रहा है, because hamstring थोड़ा सा कम ही use होता है for most, and low back पे भी थोड़ा ज़्यादा feel होता होगा when you do hip thrusts many a times because of the same reason. So key takeaway, if your muscle isn't stretching fully before you contract or squeeze it, you might be leaving some growth on the table, and that's why you need to visualize this. What are the two ends and how do I stretch them fully? By tweaking some angles, setup stuff. And now onto the second concept that you need to know, because it's just thrown around without enough background information, which is necessary, just like most things. Context makes it or breaks it, because it's otherwise just like telling someone to eat less to lose fat. So the second one, you've heard about this. Go slow for more tension and better technique. Better form if you go slow. Now it sounds smart, right? Maybe if you're new, it's very good advice. Take it for sure. But it's a very hard 6 or 7 on 10 advice if you make it to be like a generalizable one. Okay, many people or most people can use the non-jerky slow movements, but it doesn't mean just drop your weight, let's slash your weight into half and just focus on the counts of going slow instead of focusing on actively resisting decent amount of weight that is worth resisting. Now this sounds like a lot of technical stuff, but I won't give you basic advice. Let me just help you visualize exactly what I mean. Take an example. Think of pushing a small car tire uphill on a steep slope versus having like you have huge truck or a tractor tire that you have to push up. With a light tire, what happens is you are just kind of giving it a nudge, guiding it, even if you go like super slow. It's not a lot of effort. With a large tire, you are actually fighting against gravity and inertia. Maybe you're just using your whole body as well to keep on pushing it. And any stopping means it's coming against your body and coming down again. So it has to be constant. Now going slow with a light tire is exactly, lightweights. You are guiding the tire. It's not constant resistance that you're met with. Hence, minimal gains with the weights as well. Going slow with moderately heavy weights while actively fighting the resistance is pushing the big tire uphill. It's constant, consistent, and if you just let it go, it means it's dangerous. So that's that. Apart from the dangerous part, don't pick everything else. So the right way, how to apply true resistance instead of just focusing on going slow. Firstly, choose a weight where 10 to 12 reps challenge you but not just in the last 3 reps. They should challenge you throughout the set. And this is a skill that you get better at, picking the right weight. But it needs to be intentional. You need to be conscious to get better at that. Number 2, lower the weight under tension, not just because you're trying to be slow, but because you're actively resisting it. Again, by choosing the right weight, this makes it automated. Number 3, feel the muscle work throughout the rep. If it's lighter than you should be resisting, you won't feel the muscle work throughout the set. You'll just feel it for the final 2 or 3 reps, and for the rest of the set, it'll just be a bit of a county thing that you are just consciously slowing it down. So key thinking takeaways: the fix for instantly better and gradually major gains overall from this video would be, as a rule of thumb, try to maximize stretching the muscle from both ends and thinking in those lines that where would this muscle stretch from both ends, or where does it attach on both ends. Just thinking a few things on those lines keeps on getting you that those marginal gains knowledge wise as well, and maybe the curiosity you need as well to really get obsessed with in a positive way with the fitness stuff. If you don't really get where it's attached and stuff, the muscles, just ask me, ask people online. Obviously there's ChatGPT now. Number 2, stop thinking about slow reps. Think about fighting against resistance at all times. Remember the tire analogy. It should be like pushing a heavy tire uphill, constantly coming against you. If you just let loose, that should be the resistance. You should be struggling against it. And while your form is sexy still, do not ignore that at any time. Lastly, every rep should feel like it's like a consistently challenging one. Make these 2 shifts overall, and you'll definitely see immediate results without adding a single extra set or exercise.